What is XAW? Unfortunately, the real question should be, what was XAW? Xtreme Asylum Wrestling was a small, independent wrestling promotion that was formed, and then fallen, nearly 2 decades ago. At the time, it was just a handful of guys, and a few women, trying to make a name for themselves while telling awesome stories in the process. No arenas, no television deals, not a streaming service to be found, just a group of combatants showing their skills in the most brutal ways possible. While the brand was short-lived, its spirit lived on in those of us who continued in the industry later on. However, nothing else ever quite lived up to the hype in our own minds. The premise of XAW was that the company as a whole had a singular unifying gimmick. Every wrestler was an inmate at various insane asylums across the country, allowed freedom only by participation in the organization. Since rediscovering the old footage from all those years ago, my purpose for this channel is to use modern technology to bring it back to life. Retell the stories that we did as they were originally intended to the best of my ability, and eventually use the WWE 2K games to tell the stories we never could before, all in the perspective of the character I played, Dr. Sean Matthews. While many of us had been professionally trained prior to the formation of XAW, we did bring in some new faces at the start of the brand. After months and months of training and practice, we began to put together our first shows, plotting out upcoming storylines and future title holders. Soon, we began to have a better idea of who was going to make the cut, and who was going to fail before we even got started. Hot summer days and accidental injuries tightened down the potential roster, leaving just enough to still move forward. By the fall of that year, it was time to put on our first shows and either sink or swim. Our opening shows were held at the local fairgrounds, so that people who might not have even been looking for a wrestling show could potentially find us. We got a lot of things right, but there was also a lot of things wrong. Poor lighting and breakdown of the ring itself led to very little footage being captured from those 2 shows. The primary stories for the fairground shows was everyone vying for titles either through tournaments or multi-man matches. The goal, of course, was to advertise our upcoming indoor shows, so we made it known that all titles won would be presented and defended in the next scheduled appearances. Some mishaps did occur at the fairgrounds, though, forcing us to change some of the planned directions. As I move forward on this channel, I will combine the available original footage with the WWE 2K games to alter the stories back to how they were originally intended. In that process, I will change my narration back and forth between my more natural voice like this to the voice that you hear now in order to represent Dr. Sean Matthews and his perspective on the events, both of which are produced by voice cloning technology. If you like what you see so far, I invite you to stay tuned, because there is plenty more to come. 20 years ago, XAW was a proving ground where mayhem reigned, pain was given, and only the truly unhinged survived. It wasn't just a wrestling promotion, it was a battleground for the deranged. At the center of it all was Mrs. Armstrong, Darren Bradley, and myself, Dr. Sean Matthews. Each wrestler was an asylum inmate scouted by Commissioner Darren Bradley, but as a doctor of psychiatry, I had the power to allow one's participation or send them back to the asylum they came from. As the head proprietor, though, Mrs. Armstrong had the final say on anything that happened in the promotion, since Darren and myself were also active participants due to our prior backgrounds as wrestlers. She would often settle our disagreements. When everything is said and done, though, none of it could happen without my say-so, and I made sure everyone knew that. This is my story of Xtreme Asylum Wrestling. How it began, how it fell, and how it should have been. Welcome to the asylum. You'd have to be insane to do this.